right. Well, welcome to a Thursday edition of Folklore Friday. Allie
That's
has
right.
joined me for the last one of the year. I know we've said this, twice now before this, but it was the last time. But we legit mean it this time because literally we have, what, four and a half
4
hours?
showers.
No, wait, that's a lie. 5.5 hours, because math is hard. Public math is the worst.
Yeah.
5.5 hours left of 2020.
I was right there with you.
Oh, golly. And I'm not even I haven't even started my Scandinavian drinks yet.
That's sad.
It is. I mean, I've made them because I have to meet in advance, but listen. How was your holiday, Allie?
Oh, it was good. I'm actually drinking some of your beer.
Oh, well, then let's go to that because I have some of that. And
cheers. It's very good.
Milal, I believe is. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, and I'm sure Kyle is in the background going, oh. But it's a traditional beer that they would make. Apparently, each brewery is it Iceland or Denmark, Sweden, one of those. I've read so much about this area, about the Scandinavian area, that the places are all running together a little bit, which is why Kyle's doing the presentation, not me.
You get to enjoy the finer parts of the traditions and culture.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Oh no, that's good.
So the breweries will all make this, and then it's usually like a darker beer or a golden ale, and then they add some traditional spices to it, kind of similar to our Christmas ales and stuff like that, but it's a much bigger thing over there. But for those that don't want to drink, they'll make a similarly spiced soda. So the breweries will also put out a soda for those that are DDing and all that.
That's very cool.
More you know. And I'm gonna Happy New Year, Suzanne.
Yay! I think we're all ready to celebrate the new something. A new number, I guess.
Yeah, I'm scared to say that 2021 is going to be better, because that's what I thought about 2020. But that being said, it was, as bad of a year as it was, I kind of think that there was some good to it. I mean, we got to learn how to connect with our community in a different way, which is always important and always good.
Yeah.
And, it brings programs like this to people who can't necessarily make it out of their home.
Yep.
So maybe we can start trying to live stream the Folklore Friday so that those that can't actually make it, or it's too chilly or what have you.
Or you just don't want to leave your house. I have those days. I totally get it.
I've had a year of that. I'm kidding. Yeah. Having to go back into the office and wear real pants all the time. That's going to be the worst.
I am looking. I hope fashion changes into comfy clothes, because
I was watching I think Tan France, because I'm a big Queer Eye fan. He and this other fashionista were doing this thing about the fashion styles of 2020 and how comfort really shows what your fashion style is. And it was tie-dye apparently is big again, but it was a lot of fashion.
Yeah, let us know if anybody tie-dyed anything. It's like the sourdough, I feel like it was on a bingo card somewhere. Did you do sourdough bread? Did you tie-dye something?
Learn a new craft, I think, or take up a new hobby.
Yep. Play virtual games.
I've played a lot of virtual games. That's no show. Which actually, we're going to be coming up with our next series. What are we starting in February, Allie, for Playing with History?
I think so.
We were doing a couples version. It's going to be card games.
Yes.
Carly, who you've seen with us, is going to be playing with Allie because she's much better at explaining rules than I am. I try to explain rules and people get confused. So,
yep. We're getting some stuff together. Okay. Good to see there are some people viewing. Happy New Year, Yannette.
Happy New Year's.
Did you start any new traditions this year?
Yeah, actually, there is an Icelandic tradition, because Scandinavia, all the things this year for me. There's an Icelandic tradition that it's essentially like their word. I'm not going to try to say it because I know I'm going to butcher it, and I don't want to do that to those poor people. But it's essentially about a book flood. It started at the beginning of, or at the end of World War II, beginning of World War II, when books were like paper was it was a very precious commodity. And because it's such an isolated island, they would only get they'd only get books like once or twice a year. So their tradition was to purchase books for their loved ones and give them on New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve tends to be, it seems like all across Europe, New Year's Eve is the bigger day than Christmas Day. Or sorry, Christmas Eve is the bigger day than Christmas Day. So they would spend the evening drinking hot cocoa, drinking gluga, and reading these books and just really kind of taking the time to slow down, which is one of the things that I've learned this year, is that slowing down is really important. Like, I can still put out programs, I can still connect with the board, with our volunteers, with our community, and not be as crazed. And then that actually lets me connect more meaningfully. I hope you guys at home feel that way as well. So that's what I started this year. And like all the candles everywhere.
Yes. Stacy got me a book on hygge, which looks like Hygge, looks like it's pronounced higgy, which is what I thought it was pronounced as.
Yeah, I struggled with that one because phonetics, I should say English phonetics, didn't make sense with it.
Yeah, which is, I guess, just about like a whole Danish culture of well-being and
it's Scandinavian, actually. Primarily Danish, like in the book it was, but I think it originated in Norway.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that's, they do like their candles and lots of other good things.
It's all about creating a safe place, which I think we've learned this year is kind of tantamount. And the importance of community, I think. So how about you? Have you tried any new traditions this year?
I'm trying one tonight. So usually on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I eat pork and sauerkraut. But we went to Japan last year, and I'm still kind of feeling lonesome for that country. So we're eating soba noodles. And apparently it's a tradition that there's like a sauce that you drink with it, and when you finish the sauce, it's like drinking away kind of whatever happened that year to start new. So
I like that.
Yeah, we're going to have a Japanese New Year.
I like that. We've got sauerkraut. I might be doing that.
Yeah, I do like my sauerkraut. I've been eating sauerkraut all week, so I'm like hoping that like builds up some like good luck resilience.
I'm pretty sure you still have it in your system, so it's probably just
that's how my mind works. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we all need like a collective sigh of like letting off the year.
I do too. I mean, I tried a new tradition last year that I've been banned. Well, you're one of the ones that have banned me from doing it.
Yeah.
I tried rolling. I'm a nerd. I'm a dork. I feel like you can't really work in museums without being a bit of a dork. I don't know what.
I heard that beep.
Yeah,
I thought that was my house.
I started to roll, like I've got some D20s, and I rolled one. Well, my wife and I rolled one to see, like, this is how we're going to start the year. And those that play Dungeons and Dragons or games like that, I rolled a natural 1, which is the worst that you can get. And in that game, it means a critical failure. So, I mean, if you want to blame me for 2020, I will totes take that, because, just don't send me hate mail, please. Because I'm blaming me for it. But I've been banned by my friends to not do that again.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, we're not rolling any D20s tonight. I will be lucky if I see it to midnight.
Yeah.
Because apparently I'm old this year. What about you guys? Do you guys have any new traditions that you started this year?
What are you doing for New Year's?
Yeah,
Obviously listening to us, so thank you.
which is, hey, thanks. um, we're happy to start the New Year's off right. Those of you that are just tuning in, Allie and I are drinking a Scandinavian style beer. I homebrew, so I made it for us.
It's very good.
It's called Yule. It's a style. So it's a nice spice brown ale. I actually put oak chips that I aged on aquavit in here, so it is delicious.
You can taste it. It's so good.
And then I also made, as my wife comes up sneakily, Gluga.
Oh, I like the phantom hand coming in.
Yeah, right. My phantom drinking buddy, so I'm not drinking alone. So Gluga is it is a Swedish drink. It is made out of wine. Apparently, from the history that I read of it, and I'm sure Kyle can correct me if I'm wrong. But it started with a king who really enjoyed his German wine, a king of Sweden, sorry, and but it was a colder night, so he had people spice it, warm it up, and Gluga means glowing. From the translation I read a few different translations, but for this story, it meant glowing. So essentially, it meant Gluga, or like meaning glowing wine, is what it's turned out to be. So warm glowing wine. It has aquavit, it has brandy, it has raisins and almonds and cloves and cardamom, and it's been in the slow cooker for 3 hours. So
it has to smell so good.
my house smells delicious. The wine smells amazing.
Oh my god, it's like all the good things in there.
Yeah, okay.
Tastes good.
I'm adding almonds to all my almonds and raisins to it from now on.
Do you think it's better than mulled wine?
Oh yeah. It's more full bodied. The almonds and the raisins really add a bit to it. So I will, oh gosh, I combined a few different recipes. I will try to write what I put together for you guys as close as I can remember. Margaritas sound delicious, Suzanne. I have been craving those so bad. So please, yeah.
Cheers.
I'm drinking two different things here. I guess that means that it's totally New Year's Eve.
Yep.
It's fine. Not every Friday, Yvonne. It happens every Friday from mid-September through the end of October. We took a bit of a break. We did one at the beginning of December 11th with Mike and Tracy, and then tonight.
Yeah. We're kind of breaking the molds in the virtual world. We can gather around the virtual fire at any point. So this has been a really great opportunity for us.
Agreed. It makes it a lot easier, I think. Although we do miss gathering in person a lot. I know a lot of our regular attendees have really made that. I appreciate that they've really let me know that they miss gathering with us in person. I like our community a lot.
Yeah.
We are talking about traditions, Yvonne. New, old, what you're doing for good luck, what you're doing to try to leave the nasty of 2020 or any bad vibes behind. We typically have a black eyed pea dip, but because I'm not going out shopping much, we forgot.
Not this year.
No, I'm not sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, just for all those out there in the virtual world, we're just chit-chatting before the show starts at 7. So if you're joining us now, this is just hangout time for Stacy and I. Kind of tell you a little bit what's going on with us, have time with you guys.
I promise this is not the full program.
I know. I'm always like, I feel bad if people come in and they're very confused. I'm like, it's not the Stacy and Allie show. It could be, but
I promise we've got a better program than just us.
Although I do think that would be a good program, but I'm a little biased.
I think that we'd need to have a little bit more structure to it. Like we'd have to talk about history stuff.
Yeah, I like it. Oh man.
Yeah, the history of the Cranston Heights Fire Company one was a really good one as well. I agree. We got some very great speakers this year, presenters. So,
yep.
I don't know. I kind of want to do it through this like the winter months as well, but I don't want too much of a good thing and have people not, want to come out in the fall when we're actually hopefully all able to gather in person again.
I know. Gather around a real fire.
Yes. Yeah, that would be so great.
Yeah.
So great. But we do have sorry.
Nope, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was
You go. Mine's a dumb comment.
Yours is probably better than mine by all means.
I was just going to ask out there to the virtual world if anyone is going to plan on keeping up their holiday decorations for longer than maybe they usually planned. Yep. As I see mine behind me, I'm like, I don't think I'm taking mine down for a little bit.
So Yvonne is talking about black-eyed peas and greens, so black-eyed peas, I think, are what gives you luck. Green is supposed to help you with money. I think typically in the South they would do collard greens. And I believe
Hoppin' John. I want to say my one friend eats. Who lives in the South.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
In Sweden, I believe that they do some form of kale. For the same reason, good luck and money. Spiritually, churches watch night service and foot washing. Oh, that's cool. That
is really cool.
And like the symbolism behind that also is really, really amazing. It shows that no person is above the other, and that we're all kind of together. So at least that's how I take it. I'm sure there's interpretations, but that's really awesome.
Yeah.
End of January. I mean, we typically take ours down Super Bowl Sunday. Not that we watch the Super Bowl. We just use it as an excuse to make fun treats.
Me too.
But that's usually when we start taking it down. But I don't know. I think as long as it wants to stay up, it can stay up. It creates a nice little light. Although our newer pupper has started to try to numb on the tree, so we'll see how long.
Oh no.
He's been so hyper.
Oh no.
Yeah. You see someone like we just might need to trim some of the lower twigs. It's fine.
Yeah. He's like, oh, this is so tasty. You left this here for me.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. He and didn't he wash someone else's?
Was it Mary Magdalene? No, it was Mary Magdalene.
Yeah. I thought it was Mary Magdalene, and I know he washed Judas's feet as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Yvonne.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else? Like, what are your traditions? What are you guys eating tonight to try to kind of watch?
I have a fun story. I called my parents on the way over here, and we were remembering I was studying abroad at one point, and we were all met up in France, myself and my parents, for New Year's, which is that's pretty cool. New Year's to meet up in Paris, and our tradition, of course, is to eat sauerkraut and pork. And so we went out to this French restaurant and tried to order like a side of sauerkraut with our meal, and they ended up putting it on burgers. Like I think some got lost in translation, where like someone was ordering a burger, someone asked for sauerkraut on the side, and all of us got burgers with sauerkraut on them. So we never made it into a tradition, and I'm like, we should have done something with it. Yeah, every year now.
If anything, 2020 is broken chains, so you can start that tradition.
So I think maybe next year. Now I'm thinking about it. Sauerkraut on burgers. I think that could be really good. We haven't
figured out what we're doing yet, so maybe. No, my wife's shaking her head. Apparently, that's not what we're doing. Well, I tried. I like sauerkraut. It is
denied. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she didn't even pretend, like she didn't look up. She was just shaking her head at me.
Yeah. Well, I had a funny conversation with my mom because she dropped off some kielbasa for the holidays. It was like, oh, do you guys have mustard? I can get you some mustard too. was like, Mom, I am a good German girl. I have like 50 kinds of mustard. I have Dijon and regular yellow, and we got the spicy brown. We got sriracha spicy brown, like honey mustard. Yeah.
Aldi has a few different kinds of kraut too.
Mm-hmm.
They were prepared for the New Year's. They had their craft beer one, the sriracha one, and then the regular.
The craft was really good. I like that one.
Mm-hmm. We got that the other night. Carly texted her parents that she's a good little German girl because we had Spetzel, we had kebab. No, we brought. My bad. I am not a German girl.
As long as you know it's so good.
She was very proud. Apparently, I denied myself pierogies when I said that we didn't need potatoes with it. It made my like partial Ukrainian heart so broken.
Heartbreaks for you.
I know. Maybe I can have pierogies for dinner tonight. There,
I think that's a good idea.
I love sauerkraut with those.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us, listening to our conversation.
I'm sorry that it's more babbly than normal. I mean, I feel like that's like get rid of 2020.
Yeah, it's the end of the year. Stacey and I are both just we're ready to get on with the night.
I'm just ready to get on with 2021. I think we've got plans. I am hopefully not going to get the virus again because that sucked.
Knock on wood.
I'm entering into grant season again soon. I feel like we just finished grant season, but nonprofit life. I want to thank all of you that have donated to our annual giving campaign or to the just in general when we do donations for Folklore Friday or like anything, or even just tuning in, being able to tell our grantors and our bigger donors that we do have our community building and that we are able to connect with you guys in a meaningful way is amazing. So no matter how you're supporting us or how you supported us this year, I very much want to thank you on behalf of the organization, the board of directors, and our volunteers. And I also want to give a big shout out to our volunteers who have been spectacular this year. Despite the pandemic and the restrictions and the weird weather and trees falling and goodness knows, our volunteers have just really been amazing. And I feel like every year they're amazing, but each year they seem to find a way to top the year before. And I'm very, very thankful for them, which includes our board of directors, because our board of directors are volunteers. They are my core group of volunteers, and they definitely covered when I was down for the count, which is why you didn't hear much from us for the beginning part of the year, is that the board was not only reacting to the pandemic, but they were reacting to my being the test subject, I guess, for Green Bay with the virus. Remember, Allie and I were meeting one day in March, and I remember just getting like so flushed and sweaty, and then I just stopped her in the middle of our conversation. Like, I don't know what we were talking about, programs, I'm sure, and then I proceeded to vomit, and then that was the beginning of the end.
And we thought it was something else completely different. So
I went
was that
the next day. They're like, yeah, sure, it's the flu. I'm like, do you want to test me? They're like, no.
That's like the very beginning of COVID. So that was before anyone had any inkling of anything. Yeah.
I remember the doctor seeing me with like a mask on though. So like, obviously she was scared. But I do want to thank the board of directors and for all of you guys for your patience with us this year. I know we've had some tech difficulties. We've had not as many programs as we perhaps would have. But next year, Allie and I have already met. We've already, without me getting sick, which is already a bonus. We've planned out classes for next year. So our Timeless Trades is going to be starting off in January again. We've got a really exciting one for February, in addition to our Playing with History program. We've got, I think Allie wants to start a bespoke cocktail series. So we've got that potentially in the wings. our wonderful fiber volunteers have started to work on a new fiber program. So I'm excited for that to be trialed. And oh my goodness. And on January 10th, we have the tea. Yes. So it's $15. We will be sending the tea to you. They're individual portion sizes. We're trying to make it as clean as possible. It'll be coming to my house. I don't ever go out, so I'm safe. Totally safe. That being said, when I package up your items, I will be wearing a mask. I will have sanitized hands, all that jazz. But we have 2 black teas. We've got a silent sonata, a masala chai, and
I think a white tea
and a white peach, because peaches used to be the fruit for Delaware. It was the state fruit before it got switched over to strawberries. So those are the teas and the dips. Each of those with a package, and it'll be delightful. So depending on how local you are, you'll also get door-to-door delivery. So please join us for that. That will be virtual, it'll be via Zoom.
Dropping the information right here in the comments. So if you want to register.
Wonderful. I need to update the website to put it up on there, but it is also on our Facebook page. It is not at Walmart, contrary to what the page is saying. Facebook was being weird. And I kept trying to update it, and I tried it from multiple different browsers, my cell phone, the Facebook app for businesses. It was just crazy.
Yeah, Facebook has been a little finicky, so
yeah, I think they're trying to adjust to this as well, and they're not.
Yeah.
Such a good beer. But we have a lot more programs coming up, and I am so excited to start the new year with a stronger engine, I guess. I don't know how to say it.
The little engine that could.
The little engine that could. We're going to be hitting 2021 in a much more intentional way. We were awarded a grant, and we're able to get some items to help us with our digital programming. So that's going to be exciting. I need to take some of it to the mail because my office here is overrun with boxes and boxes.
All
and
good
there's
things
stuff coming, but it's exciting. We've got new mics, we've got new cameras. So it'll, the digital issues. I purchased myself a computer, so that way we don't have tech issues tonight because it's a much faster computer and it's not meant just for museum stuff. When I purchased the laptop, it was before the pandemic, so I didn't think I needed this. It was more just for, I think, interns to be able to use when they were like doing their interning stuff, depending on like programming or collections and stuff. Happy New Year, Kelly.
Yay. All right, we're T-minus 2 minutes till program fun. I can't wait for you all to meet Kyle. Kyle's amazing.
Oh, he is so awesome. Kyle is a volunteer, intern, master of all titles at the Old Sweet Center. They are located in downtown Wilmington, not to be confused with the Calamar Nickel. They are their own entity. They are doing amazing things. They tend to get overshadowed by the Calamar Nickel, so please check them out. They are really great, and they've been gracious enough to let Kyle kind of speak on their behalf tonight. Kyle's also part of the graduate program at the University of Delaware, majoring in museum studies, which is, we're happy to partner with them. We were lucky, and last year we were their learning lab, which was a wonderful experience for us. And it was really great to see the new generation. And I feel so old saying that because I still feel like I'm just out of college. But the new generation of museum professionals coming out. And Kyle is, he's a great example of that program. He's very enthusiastic, very charismatic, Um, he might tell you otherwise, but I'm very excited for him to join us tonight. And hopefully this is the beginning of many different programs that we can partner with them on. Because the Swedes were the first settlers here, followed a lot or very quickly in succession with their Scandinavian counterparts. We often talk about the British because, well, the War of 1812 or the War of 1812 and the Revolutionary War. My goodness, I'm just
All the wars.
Happy New Year. I'm from Canada. We didn't have as many wars. Keeping up with the wars is really tired. Not to say we weren't without our bad stuff, but that's a story for a whole other day. Hey, maybe that's an idea for Folklore Fridays. I can talk about Manitoba's history.
I'd listen to that.
Some of it's fun. That being said, we're done. You are not here to listen to Allie and I. So we're going to say goodbye for now. We'll be back at the end of Kyle's presentation. But we're going to turn the floor over to him in about 30 seconds. We're going to give him 30 seconds to kind of get his, to get situated, because there's nothing more stressful than saying, and go. So thank you guys very much for joining us tonight. We know you guys have a lot of options for your folklore, for your New Year's Eve, and we're happy that you're spending it with us on our Thursday night edition of Folklore Friday. So happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Okay, I believe we're good to go. I want to make sure that I can see the stream on my other computer, but I'm very grateful for Allie and Stacy's introduction to me. And obviously I'm Kyle from Old Swedes. I'm just making sure the stream is going because I have 2 windows open. So the way this presentation is going to work, I'm first going to talk about local history and as it relates to Scandinavians in the area. I think we're good. Okay. So I'm going to introduce myself again just because I wasn't sure when the live stream would start. Sorry, technical difficulties. Although I am a young person, I don't understand technology. So Kyle Parks, I'm grateful for Stacy and Allie's introduction. So I'm just going to get into this and we can deal with questions at the end. So Gott Jul, that is Swedish for Merry Christmas. You might recognize God like good, Jul. We have a word in English, Yule. And of course, this is Folklore Friday, although it's technically Thursday, but we wanted to fit in another Folklore Friday on before the new year. So that's that. So some other things. One of the big things we're going to talk about is the blending of kind of Christian and pagan traditions to make what we know as the contemporary Yule and what Yule has become today. And we're going to see quite a bit of that. So I'm just going to get into the local history first. And I will say there was going to be stories mixed in because I wanted to have actual folklore. Okay, so let me get this going. So for all of you fans of local history, you may know about the Swedish colony that existed in the area. There was, of course, this colony was called New Sweden, and it lasted from 1638 to 1655. Short-lived colony, but in this period of time, there are a number of Swedes and actually Finnish people coming to the area. And these were some of the first European settlers. A lot of the earliest farms in this region were by Swedes and Finns. And we should say there is a distinction between Swedes and Finns, although these countries today closely align themselves. And Finland was part of Sweden at the time of this colony's existence. Up to 40%, some people will say more, some people will say less, of the population was Finnish. And Finns have a slightly different origin than the Swedes. The Finns are not the descendants from the Norse and the, like what you would think of the Vikings, for example. There are different people, and so part of this, part of the reason for having a lot of Finns in the colonies was to place people in North America who had experience in the forests. There's this, generally, the Finns were known for having a more nomadic existence. There's a group of Finns called the Forest Finns who lived in the forest, kind of lived off the land. So it was assumed these people could do well in the North American continent that didn't have big cities like we would see in Europe, at least in this region. And so that's that. I think So I have Old Swedes. This is Old Swedes Historic Site. It's in Wilmington, of course. I believe Stacy gave us a little introduction to Old Swedes. Just some context. So this is kind of the successor to the Swedish colony in the area. It's in a way a remnant of an earlier settlement. It was built 1698 to 1699. Wilmington, where the church is now, was actually founded around 1731. So it does predate the city. The city eventually grew around it, so now it's effectively part of the city. But the graveyard it's built on was directly next to Fort Christina. It's a bit of a rise above the river, the Christina River. And a lot of people buried here, 8,000 to 12,000 people in a 3-acre property. So it's densely populated. And what else do we have? So we can speculate on a lot of the folkloric traditions that took place for Yule in this region. Unfortunately, a lot of the records we have are church records, and they don't exactly want to mention a lot of these more folkloric traditions. They'll mainly cover Christmas Mass and things like that. So we have to speculate to a degree. So what I'm going to do is describe a lot of the modern traditions, and we can imagine a lot of this stuff happening in this region among the Swedish and Finnish and other Scandinavian settlers. And I must say, like, I mistakenly assumed that the Swedes were no longer in the area, but there's still quite a lot of Swedish cultural activity in this area. And I know, for example, Old Swedes this time of year does have a good amount of Swedish celebrations, and a lot of people with family history in this area have actually been able to trace their genealogy back to some of these Swedish settlers. So they are still here, just in a different way. All right, and I want to connect this to Green Bank real quick, because I kind of scoured the Mill Creek 100 history blog, and so a lot of these names that come up for the Swedes mill that predates Green Bank come up in Old Swedes church records quite a bit. And a lot of the Swedes living in this whole region went to Old Swedes. And I should say Old Swedes was not always Old Swedes. It's technically called Holy Trinity Church, but it's been known as Old Swedes informally and also semi-officially since the 1830s. But basically, we can imagine on the same grounds as Green Bank, Swedes celebrating these holidays and some of these folkloric traditions in various ways. And of course, folklore is fun because it varies a lot from family to family. I think with the pre-party or whatever we want to call it, the pre-lecture discussion that Ali and Stacy were running, we cover this quite a bit. We all have our own traditions. We can kind of adapt traditions, and of course, that's always been happening. So that's that. So we're going to get to these traditions, imagine these taking place in this region long ago, even on the grounds that where now Green Bank is. Okay, so we're going to get into Yule now. So what is Yule? And I think everyone has varying levels of familiarity, so we're just going to start with a basic definition of Yule. So Yule is an ancient wintertime celebration of Germanic peoples in Europe, and it long predates the Christianization of Europe. And we don't know a lot of the origins of this stuff for sure, but some folklorists have traced Yule to Odin's wild hunt, and I'm going to get into that in the next slide, actually. It's believed that older Yule practices have had varying influences on the current Christian holiday practices. And I think we all have heard about this to some varying degrees, in our our various traditions that we celebrate. So that theme is definitely going to be coming up quite a bit in some of the traditions and stories that I'm going to be sharing. And one interesting thing is that in Scandinavia, the word Yule is still used. Of course, I think we know in English it has largely phased out in usage, but in the Nordic countries, you'll have Yule in various forms as the name of the holiday still being used. So that isn't interesting, and we kind of like have a homage to the earlier traditions in the name itself. And one interesting thing I'm also going to cover is that traditionally, Yule was actually the spookiest time of the year. And so I think we think of Halloween as the distinct spooky time, but a lot of time, because of its spiritual significance, there's this idea that the spirits are close during Yule. So this was a very spiritually and kind of the dark part of the year as well. And I would like to include a quote here from the British folklorist Francis Young, because I feel like it summed up this mood perfectly. The medieval Christmas was the ultimate stand of light against dark, of warmth against cold and darkness, in the depths of Europe's little ice age. Small wonder, then, that this, I have to turn my page, that this strange time of year gave rise to cathartic tales of the dark, death, and the macabre. So we have this human storytelling appeal. There's a lot going on, especially in Scandinavia. There's very short days in the middle of winter. This is a time when the spirits are close in various forms, spirits and the gods. And so, of course, there's a lot of great stories. It's always fun to hear these stories and live through them vicariously and not be in any actual danger. So that's that. So we're going to hear some of these stories. I have 3 stories that I've included today. I wanted to include more, but this presentation was becoming extremely long. And I know we all have our own festivities we'd like to get to tonight in addition to this presentation. But some quick things that I wanted to bring up while I'm here is there's 2 pictures aside from where, what side is this? This is the right-hand side. So we have what looks like a boar and people hauling something. So on the bottom, that is the Yule log. So the idea is that people would pick, and I think to some degree this still does happen, people will pick a log and you burn a part of it every day during Yule. And it's been traced to some possible pagan bonfire traditions for this time of year. Of course, a lot of these details are fuzzy. And we also have the Yule boar. So I think a lot of us today will even have ham on Christmas for those of us that celebrate it. And some people have traced that to older pagan traditions of sacrifices of pigs. There's also a fun tradition of taking the bristles from the boar and making oaths with the bristles. So just some ideas there. I'm going to get into the wild hunt that I mentioned earlier. So the wild hunt specifically is kind of a literary and folkloric motif of a procession of supernatural beings on a great hunt. And in this case, they're led by Odin. That is this guy, this god on the right there. And this procession can include the souls of the dead, various other deities, and all kinds of figures. And this idea of the wild hunt was kind of put together by the Brothers Grimm, if you know the Brothers Grimm, who were collecting a lot of fairy tales, because they noticed some trends in a lot of these older kind of Christmas time Yuletide traditions of, talking about some procession of the spirits and the gods in the sky in the darkest time of the year. And so they called this the wild hunt. And so a lot of our basis for understandings of this wild hunt is based on the folklore, which is pretty interesting. When there's not as great of a written record, we can rely on folklore to point us in certain directions. And there's, of course, a lot of significance to this happening around the winter solstice and the darkest time of the year. Again, the idea that the spirits are near, kind of light versus dark. This is, of course, the solstice is when we start getting light back. I don't know, maybe we're not all winter people. I'm not a winter person, so I'm always happy to see that the days are getting longer. And so, historically and in ancient times, there's this idea that, this represents a turning point of some kind. So I wanted to call this the OG spooky season. That is the original Halloween season. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And on this, I do want to also mention some unique traditions to Finland. So I mentioned kind of the dead, the spirits, and I found a very interesting tradition that takes place in Finland. And I believe in the pre-party, I keep calling it the pre-party, where Stacy and Allie were talking, we mentioned that in various countries, Christmas Eve is actually the really big holiday, whereas Christmas is not as big of a holiday. And Christmas Eve in Finland, as a blogger in Finland writes, describing her experiences in Finland on the holidays, it was believed that dead Finns like Christmas. In today's Finland, it is still customary to commemorate deceased relatives on Christmas. We put candles on the graves on Christmas Eve, and graveyards are astonishingly beautiful seas of candlelight. And so this particular photo, this is actually at Old Swedes. This is during our ghost tours in the pre-COVID times. And I wanted to include this as kind of a visualization. So maybe the Finnish settlers in the region were using the Old Swedes graveyard to kind of light it up at night during the holidays and pay homage to their family members. And of course, these traditions are really tied to, wanting your departed family members to be there during the holidays. And I think that really resonates in COVID times when I think a lot of us would like to have the holidays with more of our family, but for safety reasons, we're staying at a distance or maybe having a little Zoom get together of some kind. So these are always interesting things to talk about this time of year. Okay, I'm going to get a drink of water real quick. I'm already losing my voice. Okay, so now we're going to launch into our first story. And I really like this story because it is a Christmas story that reads like a Halloween story. And it really highlights this idea of Christmas as the OG spooky season, or rather Yule as the OG spooky season, the original spooky season. So these pictures, these are just stave churches. Most of the stave churches that are intact are in Norway, actually, but there were historically quite a few in Sweden. These are basically what we think of like these old medieval wooden churches that have been carefully preserved. And the particular church that's in the story that I'm about to describe used to be a stave church, but it was replaced by a newer, nicer stone church in the 19th century. Okay, so we're going to go through this, Yuletide Specters. And I've included the text here. Hopefully it's big enough for everyone to read. You're welcome to follow along. Once upon a time, there lived two peasants on a homestead called Vaderas, just as there are two peasants living on it now. In those days, the roads were good, and the women were in the habit of riding together when they wanted to go to church. On Christmas, the two women agreed that they would ride to Christmas night mass, and whichever one of them woke up at the right time was to call the other, for in those days there was no such thing as a watch. It was about midnight when one of the women thought she heard a voice from the window calling, "I am going to set out now." She got up hurriedly and dressed herself, so that she might be able to ride with the other woman. But since there was no time to eat, she took a piece of bread from the table along with her. In those times, it was customary to bake the bread in the shape of a cross. It was a piece of bread of this kind that the woman took and put in her pocket in order to eat it on the way. She rode as fast as she could to catch up with her friend, but could not overtake her. The road led over a little stream which flows into Videstern Lake. Across the stream was a bridge known as the Earth Bridge, and on the bridge stood two witch trolls busy washing. As the woman came riding across the bridge, one of the witch trolls called out to the other, "Hurry and tear her head from her shoulders." This is where the story starts to go off the rails, but it's very interesting, I swear. "That I cannot do," returned the other, because she had a bit of bread in the form of a cross in her pocket. The woman, who had been unable to catch up with her neighbor, reached the church at Hanger alone. And actually, the photo I have here is the church at Hanger. The church was full of lights, as was always the case when the Christmas Mass was held. As quickly as she could, the woman tied up her horse and hurriedly entered the church. It seemed to her that the church was crowded with people, but all of them were headless, and at the altar stood the priest in full canonicals, but without a head. In her haste, she did not at once see how things were, but sat down in her accustomed place. As she sat down, it seemed to her that someone said, "If I had not stood godfather to you when you were christened, I would do away with you." Sorry, there's a box making noise. I would, I lost my spot, I'm sorry. Where am I? "I would do away with you as you sit there. And now hurry and make yourself scarce, or it will be the worse for you." Then she realized that things were not as they should be, and ran out hastily. When she came into the churchyard, it seemed to her as though she were surrounded by a great crowd of people. In those days, people wore broad mantles of unbleached wool, woven at home and white in color. She was wearing one of these mantles, and the specters seized it. But she flung it away from her and managed to escape from the churchyard, and ran to the poorhouse and woke the people there. It was then 1 o'clock at night, which technically 1 o'clock in the morning. So she sat and waited for the early mass at 4 o'clock in the morning. And when day finally dawned, they found a little piece of her mantle on every grave in the churchyard. And then we're going to shoot forward a little bit to another story relating to this specific church. A similar experience befell a man and his wife who lived in a hut known as Ingus below Mosled. They were no more than an hour ahead of time, but when they reached the church at Hanger, they thought the service had already begun and wanted to enter at once. But the church was barred and bolted, and the phantom service of the dead was nearing its end. When the actual mass began, there was found lying at every place some of the earth from the graves of those who shortly before had been worshipping. The man and his wife thereupon fell grievously ill, because they had disturbed the dead. So I like this story because it's like a Halloween story, but it's a Christmas/Yuletide story. And a lot of these folkloric tales that I was able to find actually just mentioned that a church was there. And it is interesting to think about how folklore can relate to the church, because I think in part, they're explaining kind of this supernatural through the church. Perhaps that had to do with prevailing beliefs at the time. That's pure speculation, of course, but I was curious myself as to why a lot of these folk tales included the church in addition to kind of these older folk tales. So another figure that I would like to include here is the Yule Bok. So that basically is the Christmas goat. There are some cognates here. So think Yule buck, like a buck, but specifically in Swedish, bok means a goat in general. So it's unclear where the Yule goat came from or the Yule bok came from. Some origins have been traced back to Transgrisnir, or Gaptooth, or Transgnostir, tooth grinder, who pulled Thor's chariot. And it's believed that Thor would frequently kill them. They'd come back to life. It was part of these big midwinter celebrations where a Yule offer would be made, or a man was symbolically killed while carrying a goat effigy. And of course, early Christianizers said that the Yule boks were demons. I think that's part of why we don't see a lot of references to these folkloric traditions in the church records in this region where we are. But it would be interesting to see some of that, of course. I guess on the Yule boks further, they're not depicted quite as goats themselves. They're usually made of straw. These ones are actually at Old Swedes. And of course, I wanted to include a giant Yule bok that is in Gavle, which is a city in Sweden. And they actually created a personal Twitter for this giant Yule bok. And this is a poem they recently published on that Twitter account. "I'm a great big Christmas goat, tall and handsome with a strawy coat. Look at my perfection. I'm so grateful for my protection." And I should say, the reason protection comes up is because this is not part of the plan, but the goat tends to be set on fire. every year by someone or another. Technically, that is arson. It's though, if you look at this Twitter account, they kind of play with it quite a bit. But I checked it actually just before this presentation, and the goat has not been set on fire this year. So they were celebrating the goat actually making it to the new year. So that's fun. Okay, we're going to keep going. So another big part of the Yule celebrations is the Sancta Lucia celebration. So some people might know of the martyr Lucia. In Swedish tradition, Lucia is very important because there's legends of Lucia coming to Sweden, specifically Lake Vänern, in the 13th century in a time of very bad famine on the winter solstice. Winter solstice. Lucia Day is celebrated December 13th. In the older calendar, this actually fell on the solstice. So it was significant to have Lucia, or who was kind of seen as the bringer of light, specifically think lux in Latin, meaning light, bringing light in the darkness. So this is the light in the darkness. And this picture is actually one that I took at Old Swedes during the Lucia celebration. So this is something that persists in this area and is celebrated today. And of course, this is a very big Swedish iconic tradition. Even among secular circles, it is seen as like a big cultural icon, even if it's not necessarily a religious icon. Okay, so that's the light. Now we're going to go to the fun part, which is the dark. There is another Lucy. This Lucy, to use a definition that I found online, is an evil female being. And the idea is that Lucy, with Lussi, is the reverse of the sun goddess. And the idea of Lucy is if people hadn't finished their work by December 13th, or Lucy's Day, specifically referring to Sancta Lucia, then Lucy, the bad Lucy, will come for them. So Lucy typically will ride through the air with her followers. Lucy's actually right here. I hope you can see my mouse. She's the one in the front who appears to be stealing a baby. And maybe running over this guy. Something's going on there. Maybe he just fell. And so Lucy, as you can see, will come with a procession of her followers, the Luciferda. There's actually some speculation that this in some ways echoes the Wild Hunt in its own way. And these followers can be cows, trolls, evil spirits, maybe even spirits of the dead with unfinished business, various figures, and including trolls especially as well. Some tales will say that Lucy might come down the chimney and take bad children away. There's also a tradition in some places called the Lucivaka, which is to stay up all night on guard. Some speculate maybe this is if nothing else, a justification for having parties all night on Christmas Eve, maybe. And this tradition, well, this folktale is a little trickier. We don't actually know where it came from. And it's actually believed by folklorists that perhaps several traditions converged. There was historically a lot of variation about this tale by region. So it does vary a lot, but some fun details of this image. You can see the back, there's a forest. The forest appears to be on fire. Perhaps that relates to hell, or maybe the forest is just on fire. I also like the snowman here who appears to have his jaw dropping in shock about what's going on here. So that's fun. So that's Lucy. And I have another story. This specifically involves elves. Now, I know we think of elves as these friendly, benevolent figures. The elves in this story don't exactly do something benevolent to a person. So we're just going to go right into this. And again, I hope you can see the text. I made it as big as I could kind of fit it on this slide. So if you're watching maybe on a computer, you can make it full screen and you can follow along if you'd like. So, as the story goes, the elves dance. On the marshy oak and linden-covered island of Sur, that is an island in Sweden. I was having trouble finding the exact island. When the grass starts forth in the spring, are to be seen here and there circles of deeper green than the surrounding grass, which the people say mark the places where elves have had their ring dances. While the provost, Lillestrala, was pastor of the parish church, a servant was sent out late one evening to bring a horse in from the pasture. Plodding along as best as he could in the darkness, he had not gone far when it was discovered that he had lost his way, and turn which way he would, he could not find the meadow. Exhausted by constant walking, he sat down at the foot of an oak to rest himself. Strains of lovely music started to reach his ears, and he saw, quite near, a multitude of little people engaged in a lively ring dance on the sward. So light were their footsteps that the tops of the grass blades were scarcely moved. In the middle of the ring stood the elf queen, taller and more beautiful than the others, with a golden crown on her head and clothes sparkling in the moonlight with gold and precious stones. Beckoning to him, she called, "Come, Anders, and tread a dance with me. And Anders, thinking it would be impolite not to comply with the request of a woman so beautiful, rose and stepped, bowing into the ring. Then we have another turning point here. Poor lad, he did not know what a fate awaited him who ventured to participate in the sports of the elves. How the dance terminated is not known, but when it ended, the young man found himself again under the oak, and from that hour he was never again wholly himself. From being the most lively and cheerful young man in the village, he became the dullest and most melancholy, and before the year had gone, his days were ended. So wherever you thought that story was going, it got quite dark at the end there. Of course, not all of these small figures in folklore are mean or dark. Some of them are playful and fun. So this is the tomte, or the nisse, or tontu. So that's Swedish, Norwegian, and Finnish up here. These figures are kind of imaginary little folk associated with the home and the hearth. Some have speculated that perhaps they relate to 14th century household gods. In more recent years, they've been portrayed as guardians of small things and the friends to animals. They've been portrayed as living in barns or under the floorboards. They can be quite mischievous, but also benevolent. And they are the ones in Sweden and Norway who primarily bring the gifts. And so there's a picture I took here at Old Swedes of two of these tomten just carrying a gift. And actually, I have a story to go with this, of this simultaneous benevolence and mischief. And this one is called Tales of the Nisses. So they're depicted various ways, I should say. So this one has a full face, though today you'll see they'll kind of have the hood tucked over their eyes, just with the nose and a beard. It does vary quite a bit. But typically the ones you'll see today are these cute little felt figures. So, the tale of the Nis. The Nis is the same being that is called kobold in Germany and brownie in Scotland. He is in Denmark and Norway also called Nisse God Dreng, or Nissi Good Lad, and in Sweden Tomtegubbe, the old man of the house. He is of the dwarf family and resembles them in appearance and, like them, has the command of money and the same dislike of noise and tumult. His dress is gray, with a pointed red cap, but on Michaelmas Day he wears a round hat like those of the peasants. No farmhouse goes on well without a Nis in it, and well, it is good for the maids and the men when they are in favor with him. They may go to their beds and give themselves no trouble about their work, and yet in the morning the maids will find the kitchen swept up and the water brought in. The men will find the horses in the stable well cleaned and curried, and perhaps a supply of corn cribbed for them from the neighbors' barns. There was a Nis in a house in Jutland, so that's the peninsula of Denmark that's connected to that kind of mainland Europe. Every evening he got his porridge at the regular time, and he, in return, used to help both the men and the maids, and looked to the interest of the master of the house in every respect. There came one time a mischievous boy to live at service in this house, and his great delight was, whenever he got an opportunity, to give the Nis all the great annoyance in his power. Late one evening, When everything was quiet in the house, the Nis took his little wooden dish and was just going to eat his supper when he perceived that the boy had put the butter at the bottom and had concealed it in hopes that he might eat the porridge first and then find the butter when all the porridge was gone. He accordingly set about thinking how he might repay the boy in kind. After pondering a little, he went up into the loft where the man and the boy were lying asleep in the same bed. The Nis whisked off the bedclothes, and when he saw the little boy by the tall man, he said, "Short and long don't match." And with this word, he took the boy by the legs and dragged him down to the man's feet. Then he went up to the head of the bed and, "Short and long don't match," he said again. And then he dragged the boy up to the man's head. Do what he could not succeed in making the boy as long as the man, but persisted in dragging him up and down the bed, and continued at this work the whole night till it was broad daylight. By this time he was quite tired, so he crept up on the window stool, and sat with his legs dangling down into the yard. The family dog, for all dogs have great enmity to the Nis, as soon as he saw him, began to bark at him, which afforded him much amusement, as the dog could not get up to him. So he first put down one leg and then the other, and teased the dog, saying, "Look at my little leg, look at my little leg." In the meantime, the boy had awoke, and had stolen up behind him, and while the Nis was least thinking of it, and was going on with his "look at my little leg," the boy tumbled him down into the yard, to the dog, crying out at the same time, "Look at the whole of him now." So I put a dog here. Just this idea that kids and the Nis are kind of going back and forth with each other, but there's kind of this benevolence and mischievousness. So that's Swedish Santa equivalent, the Swedish and Norwegian Santa equivalent. From what I've heard, in Denmark, it's more common to see kind of Father Christmas or some similar figure. Now, Finland is quite interesting because they have joulupukki. Joulu is the Finnish version of the word Yule, and then pukki is the version of the word Bach, like as we covered Bach. So even today in Finland, Santa is actually called Christmas goat. And this figure has changed quite drastically over the years. So earlier on, we see this joulupukki in this description, according to a questionable Google translation, is ancient joulupukki kills a reindeer for food. So this is a kind of a vicious, not so friendly of a Santa figure. This photo here is early 20th century. We see kind of a transitional figure. It's more humanoid. I can't see if there's still horns. I'm not sure how much this figure is based on a goat. But typically, the joulupukki would actually come to the house and demand things from people, not bring them things, usually liquor. And then this photo here is from the 1930s. We see that the figure is becoming much more like what we would think of a Santa, or similar to the Santa that we're used to. And today, actually, the Finnish Santa is very much what we would recognize as a Santa, or what we're more used to, but still called joulupukki, or Christmas goat. So that's a fun fact there. So the end of Yule, so the beginning is typically seen as Lucy Day on December 13th. The end actually comes on January 13th on St. Knut's Day. So this is just, this means the 20th day of Yule, or 20th day Knut, or St. Knut's Day. So Knut was a Danish duke who was assassinated. Let me make sure. I don't want to go too far off the script here. I don't have a script, I have notes. But anyway, so his name was Knut Lavard. He was assassinated by Magnus Nilsson, his cousin rival, on the 7th of January, 1131. And the idea here was to usurp a throne. A civil war ensued, and Knut was later declared a saint. And of course, this holiday was originally celebrated on January 7th. It was moved to the 13th of January in 1680. So that's one tradition. Just that's the kind of formal end to the Christmas Yuletide season. This is not the greatest depiction. I've spent a lot of time trying to find a good one that was in the public domain. But there's a practice of Julgrans plundering, which is plundering the tree. So this is when you take off all of the decorations, you eat all of the goodies, and just, commemorate the end of the holidays, just with a fun festivity. It's also very common to bring fire into the equation again. The trees might be burned, certain straw ornaments might be burned. So just one last hurrah for the holiday season and fire. Though I think fire is an all year round thing. And I just want to bring up the Finnish tradition for Knut's Day is also a bit different. So in Finnish, Knut's Day is called Nutipäivä, and they have another goat for Knut's Day called Nutipuki, so just Knut goat. And this is a similar figure to the kind of historical Santa Claus figure, but of course a little different. The traditions on this vary so much that I'm reluctant to describe what the traditions were. I think it's mainly a family thing. This one is also clearly much more of a humanoid figure. Typically, people will go around wearing a goat mask and do what they will, do what they need to do to end the official holiday season. Of course, that's very closely based on the Swedish tradition. So that's all I have. Just in wrapping up, I wanted to just think about, just bring up this idea of like the lightness and darkness and kind of resetting at the new year. And let me actually stop my screen share if I can. There we go. Okay, I see me again. So, in closing, the new year and the solstice and Yule are kind of a spiritual resetting, very spiritually significant. Doing what you can for a good harvest, for bringing the new year in a positive light. And I think this really resonates because I don't think any of us had a very great 2020. Definitely not what we expected when the year started. So I think we're happy to see at least some form of resetting, and hopefully 2021 has its own surprises in a good way. We can see what else there is to come. So that's about resetting. So I'm pretty much done. I mean, I think you can take a few questions if anyone wants any questions, and Allie and Stacy are welcome to pop in.
Ta-da!
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That was amazing.
No problem.
I don't know where Allie is.
I only had problems at the beginning. I was worried I would have problems throughout, but it looks like we're good.
I think we are, yeah. There we go. We're all. I want to apologize. It didn't show your face. I couldn't figure out how.
Yeah, I was like, it appeared people were hearing me, so I was just like, I'm just gonna keep letting this go on.
You rocked it.
Yeah.
I was riveted. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I know my phone doesn't come across sarcastically. It was another one where I sat here all the way through and I didn't do other work while I was doing it.
Good.
So how do you speak any like Swedish at all, or?
See, that's something I need to start getting on. So not really. Like I didn't join Old Swedes until like 2018, and I haven't done a lot of that. My world language experience is limited to Spanish and Portuguese, so I try what I can with Swedish and Finnish. That's maybe one of my future goals. I try to not learn too many languages at once because I've seen what problems that can cause just from confusing vocabulary and the like. But yeah, we get a lot of Swedish and Finnish visitors at Old Swedes, at least in the before times, the pre-COVID times. They've helped me a lot with pronunciations of various things. So it is always, I'm almost like self-conscious to say certain Swedish terms because I'm like, I know it's going to be, I know I might butcher it. So like I learned from Swedes that like it's glug, like glug. Of course, I have this heavy American accent, but yeah. So I appreciate all the thank yous. I was worried about how this would go, and I think I'm happy with what I found because I did some of this research specifically for this presentation. It's probably what I needed to do, to be honest, just because, a lot of my research with Old Swedes has been to kind of talk about more people, not just the Swedes. Of course, the Swedes are important, but we also want to learn about our community and how it has changed over all of these years. Because Old Swedes has been around for almost 322 years. And so things change in that time, it turns out.
Weird.
Yeah. I really like that you mentioned ghost stories, because a lot of people nowadays don't realize that like ghost tales were originally like a big part of, a lot of Christmas celebrations. So I love that little tidbit, and I hope like maybe one day that can get incorporated back into like people's traditions.
Yeah.
We were actually talking, I think, Allie, you sent me a message halfway through December, I think, from the Smithsonian saying, hey, maybe we can start incorporating this again, because the Smithsonian said something about a new tradition of incorporating ghost stories. So Kyle, you like fulfilled her wish without even knowing.
Thank you.
Yeah, like Yuletide Specters, that was one of the most interesting ones, because it's a Christmas story, but it is very much also, I mean, you're going into a church and everyone is headless. What's going on there? Yeah.
What did you title again? The OG?
The OG spooky season.
Yeah, OG spooky season. That was my favorite. I sent Allie a message going, oh my gosh, I love Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, what am I going to call this? I'm just going to call it OG spooky season. That's what it needs to be called. Because of course, a lot of these practices do predate the kind of spread of Halloween, as we know. And it is interesting. I mean, for all of you Halloween fans, you can now extend the Halloween season all the way through the new year, if you'd like.
My name's not showing, but people want me to see my name. The things that I was reading was that the Norse warriors, I mean, I know that they're like, when you say Vikings, people immediately think of like the show and how there's that conical helmet that's not at all historically accurate. And it's a very broad term for a very diverse group of people. But from what I've understood, one of the Norse warrior traditions was on New Year's Eve to make a toast, to boast about accomplishments that they've made. So to enter the year strong, instead of lamenting, what didn't go well, focusing more on the positive, I guess, and as a show of strength. But for us, it would be just a show of goodwill and perseverance, because 2020 kind of sucked for most of us. So Kyle, why don't you share something, boast about something, a humble boast.
Ooh, I'm not a braggadocious person. Like just anything that happened this year, or
what happened this year that you were proud of?
Oh, well, I don't know if Mike Conley is watching, but over the summer, I ended up interning for the Newcastle Historical Society. And I got to participate in creating a really new type of program, which was, because I know we've all been doing a lot of virtual programming. And I think there's been a lot of very interesting stuff going on. But I helped create kind of like a do your own scavenger hunt kit for the whole city of Newcastle. Liberty and Intelligence. It's a play on Liberty and Independence, Delaware's slogan. Is that the motto? So it's themed to the Revolutionary War, and kind of you're participating in the espionage that took place, and in the process you kind of go around Newcastle and learn about various things there. So I hope that's doing well, because of course that ended in August, and I left it with Mike, and I saw that it kind of launched. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm proud to have participated in, kind of because I'm very big on non-traditional programming, and especially now more than ever, where we really need a lot of non-traditional programming.
Oh yeah,
to keep people engaged, and I think we're all dying to do fun things, but we also want to be safe. So if we can find a way to do those at the same time, I think everyone's happy to have those chances. So I'm proud of that. Like I was of course. In my fashion, when I start a project, I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, how is this? Because Allie, you created an escape room with Mike at the Chadds Ford Historical Society. Mike kind of had some familiarity with this concept, and I was going into this like, okay, this is new, but I'm very proud of how it ended up, and that's like a good project to have under my belt. Because again, I think maybe COVID will have long-term impacts on how museums do programming. Who knows? So it is good, and non-traditional programming was also always a fun experiment to try to engage people in new ways. And I think we want to engage with museums and history and the community in new ways.
Yeah,
I guess something I can brag about.
that's an amazing brag. We'll toast to that. So let's go.
I don't have my toasty thing. I gotta get my
water.
I gotta go grab it. But my friend for Christmas actually got the Liberty and Intelligence as a gift. So
I saw that. So before we go to Allie for hers, while she runs off to go get her toasting drink, Kyle, you've got a question as to the Newt character. Is it similar to Krampus?
Probably not. Just so Canute is a kind of a saint, but just kind of that's used as a marker of the end of the holiday season. So that's just a day people use to take down all the decorations. Though there are some characters that I felt were very Krampus-like that I encountered. So specifically the ancient Joulupuki, like the ancient Finnish Santa Claus, was quite a dark figure, kind of demanded things from people. And I've seen some stories where Joulupuki is kind of like punishing bad children. So it's kind of, Joulupuki appears to be, there are some semblances to Krampus. And also I think Lucy, the bad Lucy, Lussi, has a lot of these semblances of like, hey, you need to be good or Lucy will come get you. So, we see some of those semblances there. So there are some Krampus-like characters in the air.
Yeah, I would think that this would be a nice hybrid learning program. Absolutely. We focus a lot on the British settlers and not enough on the rest that have made up the area. So we're definitely looking for both, or for that. Yeah. So Kyle, apparently we need to keep partnering with you if that's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, even in this area, the Swedish colony isn't well known, and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's always fun. Museums need to work together.
We do, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite things is working with other museums. We have the same goal. We just kind of get focused and are like, how do we keep everybody engaged with like a shoestring budget? Small museum life, guys.
Yep.
Because that was a question that we got asked, is that if we were going to make this as a hybrid learning program. So I definitely think that we could do that. There's enough traditional crafts. We could probably help people make their own little Yule goats.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
oh my
it's
gosh.
a matter of getting the straw and putting them together.
We have sheep. I'm pretty sure we can figure it. We'll use fresh straw, not use straw though.
You'll have one of your sheep model for something.
One of our volunteers was trying to put a Santa hat on one of our sheep this year. It was kind of entertaining. What was I going to say? Allie, your turn for your humble brag. Oh, wait, no. How about a driving scavenger hunt? We could certainly try. I like this idea. Challenge accepted.
Yep.
Challenge accepted, Kelly.
Virtual escape room. Kyle, leaving I found the virtual escape room information for you that you worked on. I'm posting it.
For Chad's Ford or just for
yours, for the Newcastle one. Sorry. Okay. I'm distracted for a second.
No, it's fine.
And once Allie posts that, Allie, it's time for your humble brag for the year.
Well, I don't brag, so I'm gonna do a toast. You know me, you're gonna yell at me later. But I did want to do a big toast to all the sort of a boast, I'll do a toast to small places like small museums like this one, small businesses, small restaurants, just like for doing it this year, trying to adjust and think on your feet and be flexible 50,000 times over. Being involved with a couple small organizations like Stacy, you and I, and Kyle, we all know that firsthand, just like all the ways that we just had to like be on our toes this year. But we learned a lot. Like I've learned so much this year. I learned how to become a video editor. Not a great one, but I can make videos now because I need to. So there is some good that came out of just a really tough year, but I'm just like really thankful for all these really small places that I like have in my heart and I follow and I cheer you all on. So just a big toast and a thanks to all those places for just doing their best this year. And sometimes that's just enough.
I'll scale to that.
Yeah.
Does anybody that's watching still have a boast that they have or a toast that they want to make? Because 'tis the season. I don't feel like I've got a lot to brag about. I didn't die, so there's that.
I think that's a huge one. Yeah. I think that you beat COVID, and I know you're still fighting it, but
yeah, there's that. And I did my toast and my thanks, but I can do it again. I mean, I'm still super thankful to our board of directors and our community for really coming out and supporting us during all of this, supporting my wackadoodle ideas, as y'all always do. I'm thankful for partnerships that we do. So I guess my boast this year is being able to be part of the museum community as we all kind of banded together and tried to make the most out of this really terrible situation. This pandemic could go either way. It could serve to separate us and sever ties, or it could build the ties stronger. And I would like to boast on behalf of Green Bank that we've used it. My dog is apparently cheering me on. That we've used it to kind of solidify our partnerships in the community. And it just shows the importance of those partnerships, of the other local museums that we have the privilege to work with, like the Old Swedes Historic Site, the Forgotten Wilmington Memories, Newcastle Historical Society for boasting all of our posts, and all of that. So to our community, to our volunteers, to our board, and to our community partners, Happy New Year and cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, is it lame if I'm doing this with water?
No, you're smart.
It totally counts.
The night is young.
Okay.
So that's what we got. We've got a lot of thank yous. I mean, Kyle, you are
there. I appreciate this, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to share this stuff with people too, because when I first learned a lot of this, I thought it was very interesting too, especially the Finnish traditions. I thought those were very unique and interesting.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I'm biased. I've been really eating up this culture and its lore this year. Allie's kind of made fun of me she started off making fun of me for seeing how obsessed I was about it. And then I gave her the book and she's like, I understand now.
I know. And then I went around and reorganized my whole house.
I know, she's messaging me, sending me pictures. She's like, look, I did my office and my craft room.
And then and now I sit in last night I was sitting, in my little cozy nook area and was like, wow, this is a very hygge moment. How can I make this more hygge? I'll make some tea.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for us. So on behalf of Green Bank and the Old Swedes Historic Site, we wish you guys a very happy and safe New Year, and we hope to see you all in 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much, Kyle.